Hi, it's Patrick Hutzel from IntensiveCareHotline.com, where we instantly improve the lives of families of critically ill patients in intensive care, so that you can have peace of mind, real power, real control, and so that you can influence decision making fast, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse in intensive care. This is another episode of Your Questions Answered, and in last week's episode I answered another question from one of our readers, and the question last week was: my dad had a stroke, has been in intensive care for more than 2.5 months now and is still ventilated. Will he ever get off the ventilator? You can check out the answer to last week's question if you're clicking on the link below this video. In this week's episode of Your Questions Answered, I answer another very important and also one of our most frequently asked questions from our readers. And the question this week is: how long does it take to die after removing the breathing machine or life support? If your loved one has been in intensive care for critical illness, and if your loved one is in a situation where the intensive care team has suggested to you and to your family that stopping life support or withdrawing treatment would be quote unquote in the best interest of your critically ill loved one, then you and your family might be wondering how long it will actually take until your loved one will actually pass away. First of all, if you are in this difficult, challenging and also once in a lifetime situation that you are about to lose a loved one to critical illness in intensive care, then I can only emphasize how terrible and how awful you and your family must feel, and I can only emphasize the pain and the frustration you must be going through. Intensive care is not an easy environment after all, and if anything, it's generally testing the faith, the spirit, the belief systems and the values people have. You and your family are going through a huge challenge, and that's even more so if your loved one is approaching their end of life in intensive care. Let's face it, after you and your family have come to the conclusion, after you've had meetings with the intensive care team, and also after you have done your own research and your own independent research here at IntensiveCareHotline.com, that the end of life of your critically ill loved one is inevitable. You and your family want to make sure that your critically ill loved one isn't going to suffer unnecessarily. And maybe you also want to get the timing right in this end of life situation, because you may want to make sure that you and your family are present when life support or the ventilator will be removed. I have also inserted some links to some related articles in the written version of this blog below this video. So some of the related articles that I would recommend are: have a look at family meetings in intensive care or the elephant in the room. Also, other articles about family meetings are: how can you be prepared, be mentally strong and be well positioned for a family meeting with the intensive care team. And there is part 1 and even part 2 of those blog posts if you're clicking on the link below this video in the written version of this blog. Whatever you and your family choose to do in this difficult and challenging situation, whether you do or you don't want to be present during removal of life support, it's your choice, and after all, most importantly, you want to have peace of mind, control, power and influence during this once in a lifetime situation. So choose what you feel is the right thing for you and for your family personally. Most importantly, don't let the intensive care team pressure you to agree to something that you are not ready to do as yet. I have seen too many end-of-life situations in more than 15 years intensive care nursing in 3 different countries, where families of critically ill patients have been pushed into agreeing to removing or stopping life support because the intensive care team was either needing the intensive care bed quickly for another patient in need of intensive care treatment, or the intensive care team didn't want to use more of their precious and expensive resources and basically save money. Or the intensive care team didn't want to get too emotionally involved into the end-of-life situation. Or the intensive care team didn't want to deal with a quote-unquote difficult family any longer, where the intensive care team just couldn't handle the pressure and the emotions of the family any longer. And the intensive care team sometimes didn't want to or does want to finish off doing some medical research on your critically ill loved one, and now they have finished their research and now they are ready to let your loved one die. The bottom line is that you and your family want to be in control, you want to have power, you want influence, and after all, you want to have peace of mind in this challenging and once-in-a-lifetime situation. If you and your family need more time that you want to spend with your critically ill loved one before life support or the ventilator will be removed because you are waiting for an important family member or friends to be present, then you need to make that crystal clear to the intensive care team. If you and your family member want to spend another day or night at the bedside with your critically ill loved one, then you need to make that very clear to the intensive care team, and you should accept nothing less than what you are asking for. Also, if you want to have your loved one pass away at home despite their ventilation, you should ask for it, as certain services can provide such holistic and family-centered care and services. You can check out intensivecareathome.com.au for more information. If you think and feel that your critically ill loved one is unnecessarily suffering, and if you think that every minute of their life is a burden, then you should make that very clear also. The bottom line and the fact of the matter in this once-in-a-lifetime situation is that you and your family want to leave this situation with peace of mind, control, power and influence, because as heartbreaking as this situation is for you and for your family, you don't want to overburden yourself, and you don't want to have any regrets. You don't want to leave with a bitter taste in your mouth and think that afterwards that the end-of-life situation could have been handled differently and better. Also, don't assume that because the intensive care team is dealing with end-of-life situations regularly, that they know or understand what your wishes really are. Intensive care is a high-pressure environment, and the intensive care team might hasten or, quote-unquote, speed up this end-of-life situation in a manner that you don't feel comfortable with. Remember, you and your family need to live with the memories of this situation for the rest of your lives. So make sure your needs are met. After you and your family have established what the end-of-life situation should look like so that you can have peace of mind, control, power and influence, then you can hopefully approach the situation with more comfort, confidence, and then you can finally let go. By the time life support or ventilation will be removed, your critically ill loved one may respond in a number of ways that are hardly foreseeable or even predictable. If your critically ill loved one is fully ventilator dependent and not on any medical support for a low blood pressure, once the breathing tube and the ventilator have been removed, your loved one can die within a few minutes, or sometimes it can even take a few days. The main difference tends to be how strong your critically ill loved one's heart still beats after ventilation has been removed. Another example is if your critically ill loved one is ventilated, has a breathing tube and is on high inotropic support, which is intravenous medication for low blood pressure, then your critically ill loved one may pass away relatively quickly, within minutes or within a few hours after those life-sustaining measures have been removed. Most importantly, in any of those situations, it is of utmost importance that your critically ill loved one is not suffering. This usually can be achieved by giving high doses of sedation and opiates, and the drugs generally used during those end-of-life situations can be midazolam, morphine or fentanyl. Generally speaking, high doses means 10 to 15 milligrams per hour of each drug. sometimes boluses of the medication may be given as well. I really hope that helps, and I hope that even though you and your family are in a difficult, challenging and in a once in a lifetime situation, that you can leave this situation with peace of mind, control, power and influence. Also, I hope no matter how difficult, challenging, heartbreaking and devastating this situation may appear to you, try and find some meaning and strength in this situation. Is there meaning after all? Does the death of your loved one serve a purpose? Whilst I can't answer the question for you, I believe that if you keep looking for it, that you'll find meaning, purpose and clarity. How can you have more peace of mind, control, power and influence whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care? You get to that all-important feeling of peace of mind, control, power and influence when you download your free Instant Impact Report now by entering your email below. In your free Instant Impact Report, you learn quickly how to get peace of mind, real power and real control, and how you can influence decision making fast whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Your free Instant Impact Report gives you in-depth insight that you must know whilst your loved one is critically ill or is even dying in intensive care. Sign up and download your free Instant Impact Report now by entering your email below. In your free Instant Impact Report, you learn how to speak the secret intensive care language so that the doctors and the nurses know straight away that you are an insider and that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care. In your free report, you'll also discover how to ask the doctors and the nurses the right questions. Discover the many competing interests in intensive care and how your critically ill loved one's treatment may depend on those competing interests. How to eliminate fear, frustration, stress, struggle and vulnerability even if your loved one is dying. You get 5 killer tips and strategies helping you to get on the right path to peace of mind, control, power and influence in your situation. You'll get real-world examples that you can easily adapt to your and your critically ill loved one's situation. How to stop being intimidated by the intensive care team and how you will be seen as equals. You'll get crucial behind-the-scenes insight so that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care and how you need to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care, and it's not what you think. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Your Questions Answered, and I'll see you again in another update next week. Make sure you also check out our blog section with more tips and strategies, or send me an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com with your questions. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com, and I'll see you again next week with another update.